Hi everybody, this is Group 2. Our topic is suicide in New Zealand. There are 4 questions in our topic. What is the extent of suicide in New Zealand? Why is this issue occurring? What is being done to help combat the high suicide rate in New Zealand? What can be future done to prevent the high suicide rate in New Zealand? This presentation is about the high suicide rate in New Zealand. We are going to cover questions including the extent of suicide in our country, why this issue is occurring, what is currently being done to help this issue, and what needs to be future done to prevent this issue from reoccurring.
What is the extent of suicide in New Zealand? Suicide is an issue that has a huge impact on New Zealand society. For the past 3 years, we have seen the number of people taking their lives increase substantially. In 2016, 606 people committed suicide, which is the largest number since 2011. 457 of the suicides from last year were committed by men, demonstrating a very high representation. Chief Coroner Judge Deborah Marshall has said that men are committing suicide at a ratio of 3 men to 1 woman. For example, last year, 79 people between the ages of 20 and 24 took their lives, and 61 of them were men. Furthermore, New Zealand has the highest rate of teen suicide out of the 41 OECD countries. Out of all the ethnic groups in New Zealand, Maori are the most represented in suicide statistics, with 130 Maori taking their life out of the total in 2016. Out of all the districts in New Zealand, Canterbury has the highest rate of suicide with 79 deaths. Why is this issue occurring? Suicide is usually the result of many combined factors that can leave a person feeling vulnerable and helpless. Some of these factors can include, but are not limited to, mental health issues such as depression, traumatic life experiences, such as family violence or natural disasters. Experiencing stressful events such as racism, discrimination, bullying, or living with medical problems like chronic pain, having financial struggles, and relationship issues can also contribute to a person feeling vulnerable and helpless. Statistics show us that New Zealand teenagers are highly represented in suicide rates. There are a number of reasons that could be contributing to this. For example, the prevalence of bullying in our country is among the worst in the world, and bullying can leave a person feeling worthless and depressed.
Budget cuts to the mental health system may also have a negative contribution to the high suicide rate in our country. If there are budget cuts to the system, this means that there are less resources available for people who need help. Depression is just one of the many mental health issues that people suffer with, as roughly 1 in 4 people are diagnosed. Cutting the funding to the mental health system could have a catastrophic effect on the lives of many people who urgently need help, and that if left untreated could lead to even more serious issues such as suicide. Furthermore, we know from statistics that New Zealand has an extremely high rate of homelessness and poverty, with roughly 40,000 people homeless and 295,000 children living in poverty. These are factors that can have a big influence on a person's life. If someone has grown up deprived of basics such as a warm home, food every day, and live in constant financial stress, this can cause people to be very down and possibly feel like they are excluded from mainstream society, contributing to feelings of helplessness. The most at risk of suicide group in our population are men. The culture that Kiwi men are brought up in, where it is considered uncool and weak to show emotions and ask for help, is likely a factor that negatively affects on one's life. With the societal idea that hiding emotions and hardening up is considered normal in New Zealand, this can lead to men bottling up emotions and not seeking the help that they need when it comes to having suicidal thoughts. Canterbury is represented the highest out of all the districts when it comes to suicide. This demonstrates that natural disasters can also have a huge impact on a community, where the 2011 earthquake is still negatively affecting communities, with families still living in the aftermath of the disaster that has caused homelessness, stress, and financial struggles, to name a few. Furthermore, social factors of change, such as colonisation, have caused many Maori people to experience a loss of their culture and therefore a loss of their identity. This loss has had a devastating effect on the Maori population over many years, where cultural values have clashed with Western culture and Maori have had to adapt to a new way of living in society. This loss of culture and identity has possibly contributed to the high levels of representation of Maori in suicide statistics, as losing one's way of cultural being can have a hugely negative impact on one's life. Suicide can have a huge impact on families and communities. It can leave people feeling hopeless and deeply saddened. If there's been a recent death in the community, especially if it is suicide, this might make people consider doing the same. This is especially true when it comes to teenagers and how influenced they can be by society.
Correctly, there are a number of resources in place that are available to people who are feeling suicidal. These resources include helplines, websites, school counselors, and University Wellbeing Central. In June 2006, the Ministry of Health launched the New Zealand Suicide Prevention Strategy. Its primary goal was to reduce the rate of suicide and its impact on the lives of New Zealanders, taking into account the impact of suicide on Central Group. There were 7 goals. Number 1 is to promote mental health and well-being and prevent mental health problems. Number 2 is to improve the care of people who are experiencing mental disorder associated with suicidal behavior. And number 3 is to improve the care of people who make non-fatal suicide attempts. Number 4 is to reduce the size to mean of suicide. Number 5 is to promote the safe reporting and the portrayal of suicidal behavior by the media. Number 6 is to support families, friends, and others affected by a suicide or suicide attempts. And number 7 is to expand the evidence about the rate, causes, and effect interventions. Furthermore, in school you are not allowed to talk directly about suicide for fear of feeding the idea to someone else and creating a copycat effect. This is also a legal rule in media reporting, where the media is not allowed to talk about New Zealand suicides, only overseas suicides. This creates an environment where people who may be feeling suicidal do not feel like they can talk about their problems and get help.
Next part is what can be further done to prevent the high suicide rate in New Zealand. Due to the suicide statistics increasing over the years, the government has realized that more preventative measures need to be put in place. The Ministry of Health created a strategy to prevent suicide in New Zealand in 2017. We believe that this strategy is far more comprehensive than the previous strategies. It sets out ways that we can all work together to prevent suicide by involving families, government agencies, and employers. The strategy also lists the importance of relieving the impact of suicidal behavior on the community. As this support can make repeated behavior less likely. By creating a system where we can learn from the past suicidal behavior and cases, we may be able to better understand how to appropriately prevent and respond to suicidal behavior in the future. There is no single solution for preventing suicide. This is because every person is different and will have different ways that work for them. However, we suggest that there would be more funding to mental health organizations so that there are more preventative options available to people. We believe that to prevent suicide, we as a society needs to start talking about the problem and accepting that it exists in our communities. We need to create a culture where everyone feels able to speak out their problems and ask for help. If we will stop to making the subject taboo and illegal to report on the media, this will open up the possibility for people to seek help and know that they are not alone in their feelings. Furthermore, areas such as education, family support, income support, employment status, housing, Maori development, youth development, public health, and disability issue to them a few examples. It's to be more effective promoted and supported. By addressing a range of different areas, this can help to prevent suicidal behavior. By increasing protective factors in people's lives, such as effectively supporting those in distress, supporting families and friends who are living with the impact of suicide, and building positive well-being throughout people's lives. These factors can help to reduce the risk factors of suicide. Because the right to health is recognized as a human right in the United Declaration of Human Rights, we believe that everyone in our society needs to know the risk factors that can be experienced and how to help someone that is suicidal. Some people do not believe that talking about suicide will give another person the idea of killing themselves. Otherwise, you believe. One of the most helpful things that people can do is to talk about the issue, as a suicidal person may not ask for help, but that does not mean they are not wanted. To prevent suicide, people need to talk about all suicide talk or behavior seriously, as it might be a cry for help.
We have considered the issue of suicide from a different disciplinary perspective in our group. From a legal perspective, there need to be more governmental funding allocated to a mental health sector. Parliament could implement the legislation letting it compulsory for there to be a set budget every year to go towards suicide-related issue. From a hospitality perspective, we think that it is important to check everyone you meet with kindness, as you don't know what they are going through in their life. Thanks for listening to our presentation. Due to this topic being of a sensitive nature, we encourage that you visit the following sources if you feel that you need to. We also want to make you aware that AUT has a health counseling and well-being facility in WB219.